Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with reference recordings. And today we're talking about Mozart piano concerto cycles. Some of you have made suggestions about this already, and none of you have mentioned the reference Mozart piano concerto cycle. But when I mention it, you're all going to know, and you're all going to go, This is one of those cases where the reference cycle is probably not most people's favorite, or even the best one. It's very good. I mean, it's very good, and it's deserving of respect, but it was given respect because it was the first complete Mozart piano concerto cycle with like one pianist. And here it is, Geza on Deutsche Grammophon with the Camerata Academica des Salzburger Mozarteums. Yeah, sure. Whatever you want, baby. This was the first complete Mozart piano concerto cycle. It was, and it's in stereo. It was recorded between 1961 and 1969, and then issued in a box, whence it has been available ever since. And some of it is very, very good. It really is. Some of it suffers from scruffiness in the orchestra, especially some scrappy string playing and some sour woodwind intonation here and there. Some of the performances aren't as zippy as some of the others. I mean, number 27 is a little kind of on the, I don't know, not too great side. And every Mozart concerto cycle has its strong and weaker performances. That goes without saying, right? But Geza was not a household name in the piano world at the time. Mozart's piano concertos, with the exception of a couple of them, were not really the repertory staples universally respected that they are today. I mean, the 50s, the 60s, it was the era of the great romantic virtuoso pianist, and Mozart was not that. And also conducted from the keyboard, which became a custom. And subsequently, there were many other pianists who did it the same thing. I mean, Marie Pariah did it, and after Marie Pariah, Daniel Barenboim did it at the same time. Ashkenazi did it. It became a thing. I think a bad thing by and large, and I think it is here too, frankly. I think these pieces really are written for two characters. The orchestra is one, the piano is the other, and the more you can characterize one and the other, the better they sound. And so you're usually better off when you have a real conductor working with the pianist in these pieces. So I'm of two minds about that stuff. And I suppose we could do all kinds of reference recordings. We could say, oh, well, there's the reference recording for pianists who conduct, and the reference recording for pianists who don't conduct, and then of course the reference recording on period instruments, which is really very simple. It's Gardner and Malcolm Bilson. It's easy because there aren't that many complete Mozart piano cycles on period instruments, and when they do, you have the whole issue of is the sound of the instrument tolerable and all of that stuff, and that's the best one of those. But it's still not. It's not a reference recording in the same way that this was a reference recording over such a long period of time. So what is it that made this the reference, given the fact that some of the performances are just average, that Anda wasn't, a name in the same way that although he was more in the 60s than he is now, but wasn't a name the way the great pianists in the 60s who were recording this sort of stuff were considered to be like major names? Well, let's talk about a few factors. First of all, he was the first, and being the first is a big deal. Second of all, it was Mozart's own orchestra. Well, it wasn't, but it was, the Mozarteum of Salzburg that did it. There was a scholarly aspect to it, a seriousness about this project that I think was important in disseminating its significance, or in creating significance when it was disseminated, because you find that there was a real scholarly effort, I think, to do justice to all of these works. And it was exciting to hear Mozart's complete piano concerto because it's the greatest. They're more important than his symphonies. Let's not kid ourselves. And they cover a wider range of expression, I think, than his symphonies do, generally speaking. And there are more masterpieces amongst them. than amongst the symphonies. I mean, Mozart's piano concertos from, number 13, 14, 15, from there on, we're talking actually 9, the Jeune Homme Concerto. I mean, they're major works, really fully mature major works. I mean, they were written for Mozart himself to play. He poured his greatest inspiration into these and to his operas. Symphonies were kind of a sideline, but the concertos were really, really important pieces. So there was all of that. There was Anda's evident affinity for the music. I mean, some of the performances are absolutely beautiful, lovely. His Coronation Concerto is as great as anybody's. I mean, some of the middle ones, in the teens are just marvelous. There were better versions of like 20 and 21 and 24, the minor key ones and all that than these. But okay, so there you have it. But here is the big deal, the really big deal that got this thing going. And you know what it is. It's that number 21 was the one that they used in the movie, Elvira Madigan. It became the Elvira Madigan Concerto, and this is the performance that they used. So it created an enormous publicity boost for this particular Mozart piano concerto cycle. Now, most of the people who heard the movie and wanted that single movement from Concerto number 21 were not probably in the market for a box of all the Mozart piano concertos. They just wanted the bit that was in the movie. But it gave Anda unbelievable name recognition, and it gave this series a cachet that no other performances had. I mean, it broke this music outside of the classical music ghetto. Now, when that happens, classical music people, who are snotty and obnoxious, as we all know, react in a couple of ways. The first way they react is with utter disdain, to say, oh, God, it's in the popular media, it's disgusting. Well, I have a performance. It's much better than that performance. Oh, my God. Doesn't matter. There's no such thing as bad publicity. It created discussion, a furor. And people would say, oh, I love the Elvira Madigan Concerto. It's so beautiful. The classical person would say, oh, well, I have so-and-so playing it. I have Clara Haskell, or I have someone else. Oh, it's so much better. And it's blah, 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 blah. Well, it doesn't make any difference, because everybody had to triangulate their better recording against these. That's what made them references. You understand? And so for even though that one little movement was a sort of one-off thing, it retroactively made this the set that everyone had to talk about. Because not only did you have to talk about it and say, well, I like mine better, in order to say yours was better, unless you were a lying son of a bitch, you had to listen to these. You had to have them. You had to know about them. You had to talk about them. So there was no set of Mozart piano concertos that gained as much attention as this one, and this became the standard. Now, it was a standard which was not too difficult for other pianists to surpass, because either they were more famous, or because they were just better on the whole, or because there were later projects, they redid them in digital, or because they did them on period instruments. All of those things are valid. They're valid ways in which we can say that this really is not a reference in terms of excellence of overall conception and performance. Although I have to say, once again, it's very good. It's mostly very good, and some of it's outstanding. You can't. It doesn't become a reference just because of non-musical factors. There had to be something there to begin with, and there was. There genuinely was. And Anda was a very, very fine pianist, as we know. He did those amazing Bartók concertos with Ferenc Fricsay. I mean, he was very, very good. So we don't have to get down on Mr. Anda. This was a noble enterprise from the very beginning, and one that deserved respect, and it got that. And later, when people started to want to prefer others, well, okay, let them do that. They still had to reckon with this. And the reckoning makes the reference. So there you have it, my friends. The reference for Mozart Piano Concerto Cycles. If you don't want to get this one, I understand. You can get Murray Pariah or Daniel Barenboim or Vladimir Ashkenazi or Alfred Brendel or, there's so many people, or Andras Schiff and Shandor Vague, which is my favorite for the complete cycle, because that's a performance where you have the soloist and the conductor and the orchestra on completely equal footing. Absolutely. Some people say that Schiff is too bland and uninteresting in that music. And I get that. But I think the presence of two personalities is just a wonderful thing. It really is. So there you go. You've got these options, fascinating options. And I'm very excited to be able to present this to you as the reference, because I think the reasons it's the reference are really interesting, historically interesting as regards the Mozart Piano Concerto discography, which is kind of the point of this series of talks. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me, and take care.